All right, I'm with Miss Catherine MH, Miss Catherine Hernandez, the fabulous three-story method editor, the amazing co-host of the Revision Wizards, and the wonderful. Um, I always know you as kind of high fantasy steampunk. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so I'm steampunk, very
Okay.
much.
Yeah,
Fantasy,
yeah.
science fiction, but mostly steampunk.
Yeah, I think the last thing, because I've done a session with you before, and I think the last session we did was like fantasy. It wasn't what we're looking at today.
Yeah, no, it was something
Yeah, yeah,
completely different.
yeah, yeah. It was just very cool. Okay, so let's do your writing journey first to talk to everybody who doesn't know you and your amazing editing services, which if they don't, they should. Talk to everybody about where you are in your writing journey.
Well, in my writing journey, I
In your
am
writing
crying
journey.
every
Okay.
day. No.
Yeah, that's a good place to be.
So I am currently almost finished with my proofread for Scandal's Pen, which is my dark steampunk mystery.
Nice.
So hopefully my goal is to try to have it out in June. We'll see.
Okay.
Or if it's already out, who knows when
If
this will
it's already
air.
out, who
Yeah.
knows what's coming? Yeah. What kind of editing do you do? Just let everybody know.
Yeah, sure. I do diagnostic editing, and I focus a lot on the historical side, fantasy, and of course, steampunk.
Yeah. So I'm pumping you as an editor because you're a good editor. I don't do that for
Oh,
everybody that
thanks.
comes on here, but you are a good editor. So, and I think people should check it out. Where can they find your editing services? And I'm doing this at the top of the podcast because I know my listeners, I love my community, but I know if I wait till the end, they'll stop. So where can they find you as an editor?
Sure, it's scribes-pen.com.
Nice. Okay. All right. Tell us about the podcast. Revision Wizards, you and Aaron. I've been on there. I think I've only been on once. I don't think I've been on twice.
I think we had you on once for the book you just put out.
Oh,
Well,
was
I
I on
guess it wasn't
twice?
just put out.
Yeah, it was put out. Well, it was put out this summer. So I was
Okay.
on twice because the first time I came on, your mic went out, and I
Yes.
ended up, and Aaron, your mic went out, and Aaron stopped talking. So I ended up doing a like weird Robin Williams conversation with myself for
It was great.
like 3 minutes. It was really weird. Um, Moments I regret online. So yeah,
So
yeah.
the Revision Wizards is us doing wonderful magic and talking to people about editing and revision. And we interview people about what their process is or what certain types of editing should look like, depending on what people are going for.
Yeah, and you wear fabulous hats.
We do.
Yeah.
I don't have it currently ready, but it is a
Well,
wizard hat.
this isn't the revision wizards. You can't
I
put it
know.
on. I'd feel like you were, not cheating on Aaron. That wouldn't be good. And then he'd come for me. It'd be bad. And he's got that really big beard right now, so I'm a little afraid if he comes
He
for me.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'd actually cast spells. It'd be bad. Okay, so we're looking at a piece today, and
Yes.
I loved it, and I have thoughts. So,
Okay.
talk to me about. I have two questions before we start.
Okay.
First question is, talk to me about how you're using this. Is it standalone or are there more chapters to this?
So this is a standalone. You have
Okay.
part one. So it's about like a 6,000 word short story. So I gave
Okay.
you like
I
half
got
of it.
like 3,000 words. Yeah.
Yeah. And these are going to be my reader magnets. So I'm introducing Theodore's story first. So this
Okay.
is Theodore Milton. The next one is Lizzie Milton, his sister. And then you get the other main protagonist of Scandal's Pen, Eleanor Leonard.
Okay. Great. Um, what from this story, let me rephrase that. What characters besides Theodore from this story is it absolutely necessary the reader meet in this prequel?
So Peter will become a very important character. He's kind of like the Samwise to Theodore
Okay.
later on. So this is like his little introduction because I cut 14 chapters out of the book because I was like, actually, I don't need 14 chapters to start my book. So
That's awesome. Yeah.
so I cut out a lot of like where you meet Peter and you see how him and Theodore will eventually like help out throughout the
Okay.
story. So
Okay.
this is like his little introduction.
Well, that makes me sad because I wanted to cut Peter from this. Um,
How dare you? No.
no. So do you want to go line by line or big to small?
Um, Either one. I don't have it up in front of me. Should I pull it up?
No, I'm going to share my screen.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Never mind.
yeah. Your call. I'm going to force you to choose.
Um,
Let's go big to small. I lied.
okay,
Okay.
let's do it.
So Theodore Samson hanging from an elevator type shaft, cleaning gears, and Samson's going to fall. Really
Yes.
good, like really great. Your emotions are solid. The back and forth is really good. Your exchanges are great. You're doing a great job of like balancing that need for prose to give me perspective, but also giving me solid exchanges. So it's all really, really great. Then we move into the second half here.
Mhm.
And I don't want any of this. Um, so here's my problem with the second half is that the first half is so good and so tension filled, and the death of Samson is so strong that anything after it's going to fall short. Unless you have another 20 chapters. And I'm
I
being
mean, I have another
serious.
4,000 words.
Yeah, I'm being serious though. Like, unless you have another like 20, 20 chapters with Theodore where we can process what just happened to Samson, everything after this is going to feel flat. So my recommendation would be take all of these words with Theodore post Samson and put them into Samson. And we can talk about how to do that. But
Okay.
I think you end with such a strong stride with Samson dying that the conversation afterwards, it's just gonna feel like why am I reading this? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
How
I
do you feel
wonder if
about
I
that?
should have sent you the whole thing now.
Maybe what happens after this scene?
So after the scene, so for me, I'm thinking of the three C's. This is the conflict point where
Yeah.
he's realizing stuff is really not working, and his choice comes in right after this, where he's in the burning room
Okay.
and one of the mechanics breaks and it's like pretty much boiling the people in the room. So
Gotcha.
he takes it upon himself to actually act this time. He's like, I'm not going to stand around waiting for somebody else to come help us out.
Gotcha.
And he lands up acting and saving the room and then pretty much telling his boss off accidentally because he doesn't know it's the boss
Yeah.
and getting an engineer job.
Okay. So here would be my suggestion, and you
Go
don't
for it.
have to take it, but this is what I would want. I want this conversation where we meet Peter and his family at the start. I want this to be the start of the piece. I want to meet Peter. I want to meet his mom. I want her yelling at them about drinking milk. I want I want Theodore to be a little upbeat in this conversation, because the problem with it right now is you're having a conversation about like normal day stuff and it's got Samson's blood hanging all over it.
Mhm.
Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So but I think introducing Peter, introducing their relationship, getting them started, I think is important for your larger work.
Mhm.
So I would say give me this like the world before, and then give me what I would say is like give me their exchanges over milk as the world before, and then give me like a one paragraph transition that gets him to work
Mhm.
and up on top of this thing. And then you can have a strong end with Samson dying, and then your next chapter you can skip to the next day where he's coming back to work thinking about Samson's death. Does that make sense?
It does.
And that puts your conflict a lot closer to your choice,
Mhm.
because the conflict, from what you're describing, the conflict's the death, right?
Yeah, so like it's
Yeah.
if you're thinking like the big one for the show, because I've never written a short story.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
my
No.
attempt. I am
Yeah.
normally,
The
200
big
plus thousand
the big
words.
conflict for this short story is the death.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and it's like this story gets mentioned later on in the actual original book,
Of course. Yeah, yeah. That's
like
good.
twice.
Yeah.
That like how did he get his to become an engineer when he, was from the slums.
Yeah.
And like Samson's death impacts him being like, okay, fine. I will help out this, even though this is an insane idea, but you're going to die otherwise.
Yeah, we need the emotional, we need to make that scene work, to make that choice work. We need to be coming off of the emotional punch of Samson's death, because you want Samson to die. You want everybody crying like you have. You want everybody like falling apart. And then you want them to turn the page and he's going back to work. But see, the reader, even though it's been a full day for him and he's processed it, the reader's still holding on to that emotional moment with Samson. So when he
Mhm.
walks into work and he sees somebody doing unsafe and he loses his shit, the reader's like, yes, lose your shit. Right. But right now, Samson dies, and then you pull all of that energy back in this conversation with Peter and his mom and at the house, and then you want me to re-ramp it up for the next scene. Does that make sense? That's
Yeah.
why I said, like, if you had another 20 chapters, you could do that because we could re-ramp back into this moment. But in a short story, you got to punch me and then stay with it. Like, you just got to keep
Mhm.
coming. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Like, you don't have time to lay off. Punch
That
me and
makes
then
sense.
punch me again and then punch me again and then give me one more unexpected punch and then you're out. Right? Like, that's a solid short story. It's that escalating, um every swing is a little bit bigger than the last one because you have 6,000 words to really move me. So you gotta hit me hard. um
Okay.
okay, I'm gonna stop talking about that now, but
No
that's
worries.
fine. All
It
right.
is interesting that you keep being like, I want 20 more chapters because I could do it, but I'm
Well,
trying to
I'm
do
not
a
saying I
short
want
story.
20 more chapters. I'm saying if you're gonna punch me this hard in the first 1,500 words and you're
Mm.
gonna kill this guy in front of me, and in a minute I'm gonna tell you I want you to punch me harder. I want
Ooh,
more of, I want to get closer to Samson so when he dies it hurts more. So,
okay.
and I want you to add just a few conversations in here. We'll talk about that in a second. But
Ooh,
I want you to punch me at, like, if you're going to punch me this hard at 1,500 words, you're going to kill a best friend. In a book, you can come down off of that. You can have him reflect on that, and then you can re-ramp into another series of conflicts, choices, and consequences that will match the level of intensity of this. But in a short story, you don't have the space to back off.
yeah.
So you got to come down. You can't come down off of it. He dies, and then we need you right into the choice. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Okay. So the piece is great. And I'm going to give you one more big picture thing, and then we'll go line by line.
Okay.
The piece is really good. What I'm missing here, though, is what happens when you're doing blue collar work, which I've done a lot of. I was a blacksmith. I'm going to say it for people in the community who can now all drink, because I haven't said it for like 15 episodes, so I'm saying it now. But when you're doing blue collar work, you do what you're talking about here, not assuming that you haven't done it, but just for realism, like adding into what's happening. You do what you're talking about here, which is you're talking about the job. They're making stupid games out of a job that they probably shouldn't make stupid games out of. I remember one time I was siding a building in the middle of Montana, and we had these lifts because it was a 3-story building, so we're carrying the siding up the lifts. And on a windy day, me and another dummy decided to race our lifts to see who could get to the very top of the lift first. They did not blow over, but they were very close. So that's that was dumb. But that's like, you do this stuff. Like, this is like stupid, workday, entertain myself during the workday crap. You take stupid risks, which is also very true because you get too confident in your own work. What's missing is the conversation about life in between these moments. Samson and Theodore should be talking about their crushes. And really, Samson should be talking about Theodore's crush, talking about Theodore's life, teasing Theodore because Samson's the one here who's a little more freewheeling.
Yeah.
Theodore's coming off as anxious about what Samson's doing. Theodore needs to stay anxious on Samson, but Samson needs to be talking about stuff besides work. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because he doesn't care. Like he's just doing his job. He wants to get his day done. So, for example, I have a guy upstairs. Our kitchen got destroyed in a flood, so I have a guy upstairs right now, like fixing my kitchen. And today he was drywalling. He was like putting drywall mud, and I had like probably a 15-minute conversation with him while he was working about the Ravens game because he didn't want to talk about anything. He wanted to like talk about something besides drywall because that's what he was doing. So I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he's like, "You see that game last night? Oh my gosh, that was the worst." So it's not like we need that from Samson. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's gonna take giving that to Samson, and I'll start pointing out where you can give that to him. But it's going to take the anticipation that he's going to fall off of, because right now it's not really a question. He's going to fall, right?
Yeah.
Like we all know he's going to die. So hook us to him a little bit more by
Okay.
letting them have this like fun conversation as they're working. That's going to pull us into Samson a little bit more. He needs to be, I would recommend you do something like, him playfully teasing Theodore in a way that isn't belittling or diminishing. We don't want to make Samson a bad guy. We want him to stay Theodore's kind of reckless friend. But he needs to be prodding Theodore to do something. Or he needs to be talking about something they're going to do together. They're, whatever sport is happening in this world, we got to go to that game, right? Whatever, you know, their dreams are. Maybe Samson, like that's another trope, is like the Samson character has a dream of like, we're gonna open this shop. Yeah, man, someday we're not gonna be doing this because we're gonna own a shop and I'm not gonna be in here doing this. You're gonna be my engineer. I'm gonna be the guy in charge. We're gonna own this place. And then Theodore's gonna be like, I'm not gonna be an engineer. I'm dirt poor, and please put your harness on. He's like, see,
Yeah.
you're an engineer already. You're already an engineer. You're like, put my harness on. Look at how responsible you are. Right. Like, so, but we need Samson talking about that like future stuff to connect us to he and Theodore's relationship so that when he dies, it's not just the death of this random dude who was reckless with his harness, it's the death of a friend. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel about that?
I like that. I could have him like saving up to also be an engineer because like you apprentice, like this is
Yeah.
the 1800s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because Peter is his family, of course, has got him in there.
Yeah.
Theodore dreams of being in there. So,
I would actually, if you're going to do the engineering thing, I would switch it, and I would make Samson very confident that they're both going to be apprentices soon, and
mhm.
Theodore being like, "That's not how this works." And what's nice about that is you'll get to do some world building. You'll get to do some like, no man, a guy with no family and no money and no prospects doesn't get to be an engineer. We clean gears. That's what we do.
Yeah,
And Sam's
you
gonna be like,
shovel
that
coal.
yeah, that might be what you do, but I ain't doing that forever. Like, yeah. So that's I need that kind of like um uh repartee from the two of them, that like back in those exchanges from the two of them.
Okay.
Um okay, any questions about that or like why I'm looking for that?
No, no, that makes sense.
Perfect. Okay. Let's get into that. Let's get into it.
All right.
It would be great here. You have a great opening, and I love you had asked me about their accents. I think their accents are great. I
Awesome.
think they read well. They're very easy to understand. They're not tough to understand. They do sound like early 18th century English. I actually put them into Chat GPT and asked Chat GPT what these accents sound like, and it came back close. I mean, it's Chat GPT, so who knows what it's going to say.
No,
But
that's awesome.
yeah, it came
Because
back
I
close.
pictured them on the like Irish scale, because during the 1800s, there was this huge slang war that
Okay,
was going on between the British and the Irish.
nice.
And they kept making up words and having words in order
Yeah,
to confuse the other side.
nice.
And yeah. And it was mostly at the docks, but it created this weird language
Now, I will
that
say something
I
you're
used.
missing are those like words that means something only to Theodore and Samson. Like there's none of those metaphor type things. Like oh, the classic. Now it's gonna be hard to do here because they both know it.
Mhm.
So you might need to, if you put that thing with Peter up front, you might need to have Theodore say one to Peter and have Peter be like, "What?" and have Theodore explain it. There's that classic moment, the moment I love that there's all these great kind of Cockney moments, but there's the one in Ocean's 11 where Don Cheadle says it's Barney, and they're like Barney, and he's like Rubble, trouble. It's we're in trouble. Like so, it's that like he has a word in his language that people from his world would totally understand. If he was like, it's Barney, they don't understand that they're in trouble. But he has to explain it to the people that are outside. You're missing those, like, you're doing great with the changing of sentence structure and pulling out THs and pulling out OUs, but you're
Mhm.
missing those like weird words that like only they know.
Got
Makes
you.
sense.
I do have so they're technically not allowed to speak like this at
Okay.
all in the factory. It
Okay.
has to be proper, which I go into literally in the second piece where like he slips up with this and his
Gotcha.
boss is like, you know that the top dog, it is not okay with this. I let you get away with it yesterday because your friend died.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, but you don't speak like this.
Okay. I need that at the conversation with Peter. When they're drinking milk at the first, I need you to lay that out. I need you to have Peter say something to him about like, man, if you're ever going to
Okay.
be an apprentice, you got to clean up that language. So I need both of those things to happen. I need him to use some word that is just a word that he would know. And I know in these like it's a thing. Well, at least it is for Cockney to have words that rhyme take on a completely different meaning. Like I'm trying to think of some and I'm totally drawing a blank. But it's that like there's a word that rhymes, so they start using the word that rhymes instead of the real word. Um, that's the kind of like slang that I need him to use for with Peter, and I need Peter to be like, "What are you talking about?" and him to be like, "Oh, I'm in this," and then you need to have Peter say like, "Theodore, man, if you don't clean up, you're not allowed to talk like that on the floor, and if you don't clean it up, you're never going to get to be an apprentice." Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason I want you to set that up is because that's a big payoff moment. When after his friend dies, his boss is like, "Look, I was letting you get away with this crap yesterday, but you got to clean it up." That's if you set it up beforehand, it pays off more at the end. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want you to set
Cool.
that up before. Um, okay. Second thing so up here somewhere, you've got this great start. First one, you're done, get off the other's lunch. Samson said with a smile that showed off his missing teeth. Fantastic. I have an immediate image. I'm like, yeah, this is and all you did was tell me he has missing teeth. And I'm like, I got him. He's in. Uh we like he's in my brain. I totally have him. Uh we're a bit old for that now. 15-year-old Theodore Milton said as he pulled down his brow coils back into his tie. His hazel eyes shone bright even as the coal dust blackened his brown skin as he wiped away the sweat. It's great. And then you go into what they're doing. He looked up at the gears of the elevator. Cleaning them was no simple task. Before you give me this, I need two or three sentences about who they are to each other.
Okay.
Theodore and Samson have been doing this together since they were 12. Putting on these, putting the harnesses, skirting it up the top, and
Since
getting ready.
about 7, so yeah.
Yeah. So like whenever they're like whatever age it was, like if there was, Theodore didn't have a brother, but Samson was the closest thing, right? And even though the work was hard, these were the moments you look forward to every day, right? Like give me time me in, right? Like strap me into Samson. So I need like a paragraph here that tells me their relationship. Um, and again, we're doing it because we're gonna kill this dude, so we like want make it hurt.
I'm wondering if because I'm thinking because like the three of them were considered like what we would think the three musketeers,
Yeah,
Peter, Samson, and Theodore. I could have something where instead of like having Mrs. Hall there, I could just have the three of them where it's like, yo, this is wrong. And they're like, yeah, whatever you engineer. And he's like, you need to go clean
That's
it.
perfect. Yeah, you can totally do that. You can totally drop
Okay.
him into the beginning of this, and you can totally have him, and that's where they need to use the slang word. Have
Mhm.
Samson call him a name that he doesn't understand. He's like, what is this? Is he making fun of me? He's making fun of me again, isn't he? And then have the theater say like, nah, nah, and then everyone be like, you guys, you got to clean the gears, and you also have to clean up your language. You know, you're not allowed to talk like that on the floor. And
Yeah.
now we're off to the races, right? Like, does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. I need also in that preface, I was gonna say put it in later, but in that preface, like, give me a description of what they're on top of. I never get a picture of what they're actually cleaning.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Like,
Yep.
and I know in your genre, that's a big deal. Like give me the image of whatever it is that they've scurried up to the top of that they're cleaning. Is it an elevator shaft? Because when he falls into a bunch of gears and his dad goes running there. So is it, what are they on top of?
So it's kind of like those big crane systems, but it would take the elevator. So it's sort of like an elevator. It
Okay.
takes part of the train up to the engineer room where then they
Gotcha.
can just put in the engine and it gets lowered back down to get moved into like the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So like they're just dangling over openness.
Openness. Yeah. So we need some kind of description before they go up. They need to look up at this thing, and we need some kind. And Theodore needs to be nervous, and Samson needs to chide him a little bit for being nervous. And they need to like look up at, so you give me a full picture of the
Mhm.
task that they're actually performing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um. This is just me screwing with words. You had the word cleaning twice in a paragraph, so it's like,
Okay.
yeah. Um. This is an interesting comparison. I just wanted to kind of know where your head was with it. He could hear Samson laugh over the grind of the factory. The large windows on the side of the building didn't give as much light as one would think. The hot summer day became like an oven inside the brick metal building. Do the windows provide ventilation? Like, what is the connection
It's
there?
just to give light. Originally, they don't even open because a lot of factories
Ah,
didn't open them. Like,
okay.
welcome to the 1800s work life.
Gotcha. Give me some kind of transition here that's like the large window on the side of the building didn't give as much light as one would think, comma, but it did provide the heat. The hot summer's day became like a brick oven. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just to connect those two thoughts for me. I think they're really well written. I was struggling with the metaphor, and I think just a couple word transition there will help. Okay, we talked about that.
Mhm.
Again, this is great. Here's where this is good. He's making a bet about the lunch. Really good. I need another response from Samson here. You had two Theodores in a row,
Mhm.
which isn't wrong, but the back, don't miss a chance for the back and forth because it's fun.
Okay.
That's where the entertainment comes in. So have him say something. Theodore replies, let Samson say something else that has nothing to do with strap
Strapping
yourself to the
himself in.
rope. Like, have him tease him or say something, or something dumb. And then he can come back for like, you're gonna fall if you keep leaning. And then you sound worse than Mr. Crather. Knows what he's talking about. He's no better than Ace Highs. So that's, what's Ace Highs? Is that a good
So an
meta?
ace high is an upper class person or the boss. So that is
Yeah,
one of those
perfect.
terminologies.
Yeah, this is one of those things that I'm looking for. I'm looking for more of these words. Yeah. Um, so you get the inner thought here. This is all great. I was super into it. I liked that he's like really good at it. I like that Samson is like jumping around like a dummy. Here's where I want a conversation. I want to start this piece here with like a three exchange conversation about something that has nothing to do with cleaning gears or
Okay.
jumping around without a rope. Does that make sense? It can be about Theodore's love interest. It can be about them wanting to be engineers. If you bring Peter in at the top, have Samson talk about that. Like someday I'm going to be Peter's boss, right? Like something of that nature. But this is one of those places where I want you to pull the tension back a little bit on him jumping around, and then we'll to build it slower, and it's going to connect us a little bit more to Samson. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where did I say more specific? Oh yeah, this I just want a little more detail here. The boy laughed and went about cleaning. Like, what's he doing? Um, yeah, okay, that's what we just talked about. Um, Here's another one I want you to make an actual exchange. You had these on one line. It'd be simple to me. It's like breathing. His friend hummed and leaned in more. You gotta lean, could you strap yourself to him ropes? So here's another place where I want him to talk about something besides cleaning and the strap. Right? So Samson finished before. Theodore leaned over to watch him put the gears all back. How you remember the order? It's simple to me. It's like breathing, right? Have him say something here that's
Mhm.
like, and then give me the actual exchange of it. And then, like, if you're gonna lean, you can strap yourself to him ropes, right? Like, so that let Samson kind of bring up something that maybe Theodore doesn't want to talk about. Give them like two exchanges, and then have Theodore pull the conversation back to the ropes. How do you feel about that?
Good, yeah.
Okay, good. I just want to
Especially
make
like I
sure.
could bring in, so the second story has Lizzie's point of view
Yeah.
from like she's a prostitute.
Okay.
Theodore definitely knows this. She keeps trying to believe that he doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and she's very big onto you don't make a scene about anything. So I could
Okay.
add something into that where he's like, it's like breathing. I would rather be an engineer, but Lizzie is a no-go.
Yeah. 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 That would work. Um. Yeah. So, here's where we die, and I want more dance here. And by more dance, I mean I want more of the choreography.
Okay.
I want more of the action. So Theodore put the last gear into place with a sigh and looked over at his friend's work. Not the cleanest job, but it was good enough to let them get back down. Not everyone could remember how the systems went together. Theodore took pride in the skill. One day it's going to get him something one day. It's great. Theodore opened his mouth and the words got stuck. His eyes widened as Samson's fingers flipped through the sludge and grabbed at nothing. Now, I don't know what Samson's doing here.
Mm.
The last I heard, he was just leaning. So what mud is he grabbing at? What sludge is he? Why is he hanging by his hands all of a sudden? So I need more of the choreography here that gets him into this position. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And you probably, as he gets into that position, you probably want him talking about something stupid. Take the tension off of the fact that he's going to fall. Distract us with a conversation about Lizzie, or pull it back to Peter or his dreams or something, and have him like give me a line in here where he's like doing something dumb,
Hmm.
swinging from one hand to go and get a rag he left or something like that, and give him a line about, you know, something about Lizzie or Peter or something. And then we can have this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, their eyes locked, and Theodore did the one rule Jumper is told not to do. He reached out to grab his friend's arm. The weight pulled him from the rope and swung. He swung out over the factory floor. Now you have this kind of all happening at once. Do they have a moment here, or is this like a super fast motion in which he falls?
I figured it was more of like a fast, like that's clinking because it's combined weight. It's not supposed to hold two. And then it's
Yeah,
just, it catches, but they're too, I don't want to say
but he's
slimy,
too
but like
greasy. Yeah,
oily.
yeah, yeah. He's too greasy from cleaning.
Mm.
So it is all like one big fast move.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would probably feel almost slower to Theodore because I like those moments always feel slower
Yeah.
than they actually are.
And that's what I want. I want, so if it wasn't
Okay.
one move and we had a like clink, 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 and then on the last one he dropped, I was gonna make you have them talk between the two, but between the clinking. If it's one fast move, I need you to note that it's slowing down. And I want you, I'm gonna propose you use conversational spacing here so that it looks like more of a conversation, even though it's just a paragraph of text. So their eyes locked, and Theodore did the one rule, in other words, he reached out and grabbed his friend's forearm. Give me a space. The weight
Yeah.
pulled him and swung out over the factory floor. His harness drove to the stop, and the first safety net combined under his weight. Give me a space. Is and give me a
Yeah.
line here that's like, it felt like the world was moving in slow motion, right? Every heartbeat. And it's okay to slow down here because we're in this big like emotional moment. So we want to take our time with it, right? Like every heartbeat um uh took like, took a minute. Felt like it took a minute. Just to like stretch it out.
Mhm.
Then he heard the sliding past the second safety section as they fell. Someone called out to them. Theodore couldn't look anywhere but his friend's pale face. A safety knot halfway down held their combined weight, but the sludge coating their hands made his grip a nothing. Samson slipped through his fingers with the speed of their stop. He looked up at him as he fell. Do you see how that like creates
Yeah.
this kind of like, it's a weird pacing, it's grammatically incorrect, but it slows the reader down and it makes them sit in that moment a little bit
Yeah.
more. Um, I want to scream. Someone screamed, but he kept reaching for his friend's hand. Um, his friend crashed in the machine below. The large gears turned his body like a rag doll. You have him feeling numb. You might keep him feeling numb. Never mind. I wouldn't have him scream. I'd keep him feeling numb because it's well done. Now here's where I'd come back into normal spacing, right?
Okay.
You might give one more word, like you might give one more phrase of like, you know, Samson was gone into the gears,
Mhm.
right? And just leave it there. And like give me one more kind of final punch, and now we can come back into the story. So if you're thinking of this like cinematically, this is where we start the slow motion.
Mhm.
We're trying to replicate that slow motion by breaking grammar rules and slowing
Yeah.
it down. And then here we're going to come back to normal speed. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now, I'd play with it because it may not work. It may actually make it harder to read, but I'd probably like get it out of my weird, hey, here's editing, and like actually read it yourself and see how it feels both ways. Does that make sense?
Okay.
But I want you to sit in this more than you are right now because I do think it's a great punch, especially if you've built Samson up to me a little bit more at the beginning. Um, this paragraph needs more. He felt numb as he reached for his friend. A high-pitched scream echoed through the factory, and Theodore watched as Samson's father dove under the machine for his son. That's a that's a heart-wrenching moment. I want like 7 lines on that.
Okay.
What does it mean that he does? Is he dying too? What does this mean? That he's
So it's
dove?
just like how I'm picturing is like big industrial gears. He's kind of like ragdolled to the
Yeah,
bottom and he's like dragging his son's body
dragon.
out.
He's so you need him going after his son. You need men going after him. You need them holding him back. You need him screaming in agony. This is a great Godfather. Look at how they massacred my boy moment, right? Like there's
Mhm.
few, I'd say, lines in cinema that are more surprisingly emotional, impactful than the Godfather looking at the pallbearer and saying, "Look at how they massacred my boy." That's your moment here. Like live
Mhm.
in this. You've built all of this pain. Like celebrate what you've done for a minute and have Theodore watch Samson's dad hold his son's crippled body and like have him wail. Like that's what we want to see. And then this is right. His heart pounded and his fingers shook as he pulled himself flush to the rope. So give me more here on what he's seeing.
Mhm.
Show me the whole floor. Men rush in to grab the father to try to hold him back. Other men rush in to try to remove the son carefully from the gears, right? Like, but they couldn't get him out. People are screaming for the machine to stop, right? Like, cut the power, everybody's frantic. The dad's screaming as men hold him. Finally, he breaks loose and gets his son's body, right? Like, and that's your, like, this is show us, have Theodore watch all of it. Because if
Okay.
you want this to be a moment that sticks with Theodore forever, you got to make it a moment that sticks with us forever. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so then this is great. Heart pounders and fingers shook as he pulled himself up flush with the rope. He clung to the rope and lost track of time as he tried to breathe. That's great. Right. I might even have him like pinch his eyes shut, trying to make time reverse, hoping that maybe this was all just a terrible dream.
Mhm.
Right. And then you can have the voice wake him up. He blinks. Mr. Carter stood on one of the catwalks. Spider Factory, take a deep breath, lad. This is great. Him saying, me had him. He slid through them. That's great. And it's going to hit so much harder if we watch the dad
Mhm.
totally lose it.
My poor readers. No.
No, it's great. It's this, they're going to come back for the next chapter. They're going to be like, oh, damn. Right. And they're going to be like, Miss Catherine MH, she kills people in the prequel, right? Like it's good. So um trust no one is safe. Samson died in page 5. So yeah, deep breathing. Um, this is all, and I liked all of this. Here I want a little bit more, but where I actually want it, because I told you like more on the dad, more what's happening. I actually
Mhm.
want the majority of it up here. And then when we get down here to the wrap up, give me like a last look at the father, the son on the ground, men standing around him. Give me the like picturesque moment. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
It does.
Yeah. So, and then I want this ending. Like he couldn't recall the rest of the workday. He didn't remember leaving the factory. He couldn't recall Peter Paul pulling him from in a tight hug and making him stand up the stairs from the landing and dragging himself to the edge of the slums. And then I want all of this up. So we're going to skip all of that. And
Mhm.
then I want something around everyone in Theodore's life dies.
Oh
This is
yeah.
a good transitional paragraph. So, but I want it up here after Samson's died.
Okay.
Right. And you might actually, it'll be more impactful rather than a summary if you actually put it in a conversation between him and Peter. Right.
Mhm.
So if you show me like, he couldn't recall the rest of the workday. If you before we get here, right, me had him Theodore repeated as the world blurred against his wishes. Peter was next to him, his arm around him. Let's get you home. Right.
Mhm.
And then you're gonna have Theodore say something like, why does everybody die? And Peter be like, you're okay, let's get you home. And then have him
It's
like
because we
lay
live
it
in the
out.
slums. No.
Yeah, but have him lay it out. Be like, my mom died in my arms. Mr. Underwood passed in his sleep, right? Like how many, Mary, Jolene, all like laying them off, like all sickness. We all die. Why do we all die? And have Peter be like, let's just get you home. And then you can have the like summary of him not being able to remember things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I feel like that sends you into your next chapter with that punch that you're looking for in a short story.
Cool.
Yeah. How do you feel about all that?
I like it. I mean, I do go dark in my books, so I don't mind going dark in
Oh
a
yeah, no,
prequel.
I know you're going to kill people in your books too. So I think let's just go ahead and prepare the reader.
I
Uh,
don't kill them that early, ironically.
well, you've got
I
200,000
you
words to play
build
with.
real well
Yeah,
before I kill the
yeah,
character.
you got tons of space to play with, so you can build them up forever before you whack them off. Um, yeah, but I think I think there's the potential here to really, with funner conversations, connect us to Samson. Well, with a moment with Peter up front, connect the Three Musketeers, pull us into Samson more with funner conversations, and then sit in his death through the eyes of his father. Not going into his father's, but through Theodore watching the dad freak out. Pull
Mhm.
us into that moment of death. And then wrap it at Peter getting him out of the thing. And then your next chapter starts with him coming back. Right. And I would have like he's coming back. You may already have this, but I'd have him walk in and like see the stains of blood still on the machine, right? Like see the leftover remnants of his friend's death still there, still in the room, right? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, all right. Anything else you wanted to talk about with it?
No,
Okay,
I kind
great.
of almost wish I'd sent you the full thing too, though.
Yeah, no, me too. But yeah, it's good. I'm gonna read it when it comes out. So
Awesome.
yeah, I'm pumped. Well, let me turn the recording off. We can talk a little bit more.
Okay.